Got a copy of the bulletin. There is an outline on the back of the bulletin, and for you to take some notes if you'd like. And as always, if you're going to be in a group meeting tonight, that's going to be important for you. This will be the focus of our discussion as we gather together tonight. What is a traditional family? In reality, no two families are the same. But there is one thing that all families have in common, and that is conflict. Now, here's an important principle to get us started. When you win an argument with a family member, you really don't win anything. Winning an argument simply means that one person overpowered another, and the overpowered person's point of view was discarded as not being worthwhile. Or one person acquiesced, giving the winner a false sense of being right. But almost always what you are arguing about does not get resolved. Family conflict is unlike any other relationship conflict. It is very complicated. It is always full of emotion. One of the challenges of family conflict is that different family members don't process conflict in the same way. For instance, in your family, you may be the peacemaker. You won't argue. Whatever you want is fine with me. They don't necessarily agree with you. They just don't want to argue about it, and there can be a lot of reasons for that. You might be the sulker. Everyone knows when you're angry or upset just by the way you look, and then they know to leave you alone. You may be the stuffer. Are you okay? I'm fine. They know you're not. Are you sure you're okay? No, I'm fine. You may be the litigator, such a good arguer that no one wants to argue with you. You win every disagreement. You get your way, which causes you to think, I'm always right. Or you may be the screamer, which is kind of self-explanatory. And what's interesting about the screamer is that screamers usually marry a peacemaker or a sulker or a stuffer. And the first time he or she has a disagreement with their mate and they start screaming, their mate is like, whoa, demon, come out. There are many different types of conflict. Family members deal with conflict differently. But there is one thing that all conflict in all families has in common. That is its source. James, the brother of Jesus, asked the question, what causes fights and quarrels among you? Now, if I ask you to, all of you, to turn to the person next to you who is most likely, as I look around the crowd, most likely is a family member, and you ask them what causes fights and quarrels among us. And if the conversation went on long enough and you forgot you were in church, soon there would be some very intense conversations all over the building, because most people's answer to what causes fights and quarrels among us is you do. You cause fights and quarrels among us. Well, that would be unpleasant, so we're not going to do that this morning. But what causes fights and quarrels among us? Well, surely there cannot be just one answer. There has to be as many answers to that question as there are people in this room. But James says, no, there's only one answer. And it's important that you know what that answer is, because if you don't understand the source of the conflicts in your home, how do you ever hope to resolve them? So what's the answer, James? The answer is, don't the fights and quarrels among you come from the desires that battle within you? Don't your fights, your quarrels, your conflicts come from something going on inside you? Well, that can't be right. I mean, sure, I'm at fault sometimes, But not every time. Sometimes it's the other person's fault. And James says, no. There is a common source at the root of your fights and your quarrels, and it's something that's going on inside you. And even if you don't start the conflict, if you engage in the conflict, there will be some desire within you that will spill out on the other person or persons involved. Now James continues, you desire, but you do not have. When there's conflict, there's something you want that you do not have. And you want it so badly, James says, that you kill. Now, I take that as hyperbole. That's not literal. But sometimes there are things you want so badly that you're willing to hurt even the people who are closest to you, the people you care about the most, to get what you want. We all know about family relationships that have been killed, so to speak, because personal desire was stronger than preserving the relationship. An 18-year-old leaves home because he can't stand to be in the same house with his parents and their stupid rules one more day. And if you talk to her parents, behind all the agony and all the tears and all the yelling and all the screaming and all the frustration, all they wanted was for their child to be something they wanted her to be. To behave the way they wanted him to behave. There was something they wanted him to do, and he just wouldn't do it. There was something that she wanted from them, and they wouldn't do it. And conflicting desires kill the relationship. You know a husband who destroyed his wife's self-esteem. You know a wife who emasculated her husband by ridiculing him to others because he couldn't provide her with the standard of living she desired. You know a father who belittled his children until they had no confidence. You know a mother who had such high expectations of her daughter that she eventually drove her away. If you want something from someone, and if you want it so badly that you lose perspective of the importance of the relationship over what you desire from them, then your desire for what will make you feel better, for what will make you happier, make you more fulfilled. If that's your focus, you have the potential to kill that relationship, even destroy the other person for the sake of your desire. And here's how we say it. But I just want what's best for her. I just want him to reach his full potential. And you lie to yourself because it's not really about them. It's about you. If we would accept and apply what James is saying, what a powerful impact it would have on our families. James says you desire, but you do not have. So you kill. You covet, but you cannot get what you want. So you quarrel and fight. James, why don't we get along with each other? Because each of you wants something from the other that you cannot get. So before the conflict, during the conflict, as the conflict begins to escalate, if we would just take a deep breath and think. Part of what's happening here is I want something I am not getting. If we would do that, it would change the conflict. When you're in the midst of a conflict with a family member and you say, you know what the problem here is? What do they expect you to say next? They expect you to say, you're the problem and here's why. But if you said part of the problem is me. Part of the problem is I'm not getting something from you I want. That would change the conversation. And some of you are thinking, I wish my husband was here to hear this. Or I wish my kids could hear this. And there it is, people. It's them. They are the problem, not you. If you acknowledge you're part of the conflict, then the conversation shifts from blaming the other person to trying to each understand one another. But he promised he would. We talked about it. We had an agreement. She promised if we bought her a car, she would. I'm not saying that every issue does not have two sides. Every issue does have two sides, and that's the point, see? Every issue has two sides. Every issue, every conflict, every argument has two sides. And the two sides are not, you're the problem, I'm the problem. Even in the most extreme circumstances, at least part of the issue is I want something from him or her and I'm not getting it. And when you acknowledge your part in that conflict, even if it's just a little bitty part, and you begin to focus on that, oftentimes your part will grow. It will get bigger. And you'll begin to see better what's going on inside you. And what's the best way to really see what's going on inside you? James writes, you do not have because you do not ask God. If you're a Jesus follower, before you are tempted next time to rip into your teenager, I'm not saying anybody here would do that. Before another argument with your mate, I'm pretty certain that happens. James says, maybe you need to step away from the situation a moment and speak to God about it. Before you say this is all your fault, before you start trying to extract something from someone in your family for your own benefit, for your own self-satisfaction, maybe you can talk to God honestly about this situation. I want this from my husband. I need this from my wife. I want this from my child. I need this from my father, my mother. And I'm not getting it. When you speak to God about it, oftentimes you get a better understanding of the whole picture and exactly what's going on. And then you can have a productive conversation with the other person. When you're always pointing the finger of blame at someone else, you're saying that other people are responsible for your happiness, for your fulfillment in life. And you will never experience real joy and fulfillment if it's always tied to the performance of others. Who's suffering in your family because you're not getting it? Who's feeling the pressure to meet your expectations of them? To whom have you given control of your fulfillment? What would happen in your family with your son or daughter who may be grown and gone but still trying to make you happy, struggling with your expectations of them? And then there's always that tension every time they come home. If you realize that this was more about you than about them. Do you know why you fight and quarrel in your family? Because there's something you want from them that you're not getting. And there's something they want from you they're not getting. Now, in the real world, we realize that there are times when confrontation needs to happen in families. But the ideal, in the midst of the reality, is that there be a pause, a time of seeking God, a time of personal reflection. What is it that I want? What is it that I feel I need? And I know that sounds a little bit selfish, but that's at the core of the issue anyway. So we need to focus on that for a moment and realize what's going on in us. What I need needs to be dealt with first between me and God. Because sometimes what I really need is something only God can give. And we need that selfless perspective that only God can give us. I don't know if you've experienced that or not. I'm thinking that somehow that when we find ourselves agitated with others, if we step back for a moment, what we realize is that there's something going on between me and God. And I have to acknowledge that first. And let God deal with that. And me deal with that. In our conflicts, in our families, which are always going to happen, as a lot of counselors will say, we need to learn to fight fair. And there's a lot of truth in that. And fairness is, I'm part of the problem. And usually more than I realize. If you're in conflict with God today, then I want to urge you to deal with that. Whatever else is going on in your life, it's not going to get a lot better until you deal with the conflict between you and God. Whatever that is. Some struggle, some personal struggle you're having, some temptation you're failing in regard to. It could be a myriad of things. But I urge you to deal with that. Deal with the conflict with God. And that'll help you so much in dealing with the other things. If you have something you need to share with us this morning, one of our elders will be standing up here. We're going to sing a song. And if you need to share something with him, whether that's in private or something that you need to share, you'd like to share with the church family, do that. Let's stand and sing the song.